upon the mountain, I soon shall stand. Here comes the glory land.
Just a few moments ago, Brother Bill Rotenberry led us in a beautiful song, Hilltops of Glory. And in that song, the second line talks about way down in Egypt, mid-burning sand, Moses had started for Canaan's land. Then it talks about those hilltops of glory. I believe that Moses was a man who got to do some things that many people never get to do. He saw some parts of the world that some of us can only imagine in our mind's eye view what it must look like. But it was for a purpose. At age 80 years, Moses was given an opportunity to lead his people. We know that the children of Israel did not always do what was right. Sometimes they sinned. Sometimes they made mistakes. When we read from Deuteronomy 34 a few moments ago, we know that Moses got to go up on top of a mountain, didn't he? Mount Nebo. I was privileged in 1978 to stand on Mount Nebo and to look over toward the Jordan River. Perhaps a very different landscape that we might see today than what was seen in Moses' day. Perhaps it was more fertile. It was greener then. Today it's rather arid and rather dry looking if you look off Mount Nebo toward the Jordan River. But Moses got to do that because God let him see a place he could not visit. It says that God showed him the land of Gilead unto Dan and all Naphtali, and the land of Ephraim and Manasseh to the land of Judah, to the utmost sea that is the Mediterranean, and the sea of the plain of the valley of Jericho, the city of palm trees, unto Zoar. God showed all this to Moses, even though he could not enter in because of his own sin in striking the rock instead of speaking to it. But we might say that Moses had a mountaintop experience. I believe that all of us today go through experiences similar to Moses. We either are on a mountaintop or we stand on a precipice. And a precipice simply means a cliff. We think of mountaintops as looking upward, or we think of a precipice as looking downward. And really all of us have a choice in our life to either go up or down, don't we? That not only applies to people, but it applies to nations as well. The Bible says righteousness exalts a nation, but sin is a reproach to any people. Proverbs 14 and verse 34. Moses was given a very special opportunity to be the lawgiver of the Mosaic law. Oh no, it was not a law that would last forever, but would last until Jesus came, until he was nailed on the cross. And then according to Colossians 2 and verse 14, those commandments that were given on tables of stone, they were nailed to the cross, taking it out of the way. Now Jesus taught those moral commandments in his own law. The Sabbath day was a particular thought for the Jewish nation, commandment number 4, but every moral law of the Ten Commandments has been carried into the law of Christ as well. But Moses knew that his people had a choice. They could either continue to sin in the wilderness or God could bless them. There would be a time where he would lead them right up to the Jordan River, that is, Joshua would, and they would look over. And here they would see the promised land that God had given them. The Jordan River is not a very long river, only about 200 miles long. It's not very deep. It's muddy in many cases. It isn't used for irrigation. It doesn't serve as any navigation canals for ships. It offers itself more as a barrier than anything else. And yet of all the rivers that have been named in the world, can you think of any river that more songs have been written about than the Jordan River? We sometimes think of Jordan as when we cross over Jordan, that is from this life to the next. It's from life or from death unto life. And so it was for the children of Israel. They could have crossed over the Jordan River, where it comes way down from the mountain, the streams that form it, the Hasbanias, the Hasbani, and other rivers that form it, and it comes down and empties into the lake of Gennesaret, or the Sea of Galilee, and then goes some 200 miles down to the Dead Sea, the lowest spot on earth. God's people had a chance to be on a mountaintop or a precipice. Moses had led them. Now it was up to them. Where would they go? For several hundred years, at least in some form, they worshiped God, but idolatry soon led them astray, as we know. You know, Moses had both experiences. You remember back in Exodus, he stood there on the precipice, looking out over the Red Sea, and the children of Israel heard the chariots coming behind them, and they had a choice. And Moses said, "Stand still and see the salvation of the Lord." I kind of remind myself of that film in the Ten Commandments where Charlton Heston is holding out his rod and saying, "Behold the mighty hand of God." Maybe some of you have even seen it in some political advertisements recently. Rather humorous. But it was no laughing matter to Moses or to the children of Israel. Either they had faith in God to go forward, or they were going to be destroyed. You know, that happens today too. People can either choose to put their faith in God or be destroyed. They can choose either as individuals or as nations to move forward and do what's right. Or they can be left in the dustbin of history. We know that Israel had at least the good sense eventually to cross over Jordan. Remember that when the priests carried the Ark of the Covenant on their shoulders, the Jordan River separated and they walked across onto dry ground. They could have stayed on the other side and said, no, we're not going to cross over. We like it over here, where there's all this desert and rock. And besides, we have people that have promised us a better living. They could have, but at least they had the good sense to cross the Jordan and avoid complete death in the wilderness. Now, along the way, they've sinned many a time. Over that period of 40 years out in the wilderness, on one occasion, God sent some fiery serpents to bite them and to reprimand them. On other occasions, they had no water. On other occasions, their enemies, the Amalekites, would attack them. But at least they had the good sense, finally, to turn to God in every case and let Him lead them. Sometimes when a nation forgets God, it's left in the wilderness to die. That can happen in any country. Any nation can be on a mountaintop or a precipice. It simply has to choose which way it will go. Moses had led them from the brink of destruction to the promised land. In other words, they got a second chance. They were given a chance not to stay slaves in Egypt where they'd gone, but now they had the chance to go into a land God had provided for them. Do we as Christians today or as a nation have the good sense to take the second chance that God gives us when He gives us so many blessings? Or do we throw them back in His face and say, God, we don't want them. We don't want your blessings. We want something else. We've been promised something by someone that sounds good, but is it good and sound? Now let's talk about why they became so blessed.